This is a reading from the first book of Kings, chapter 19, verse 11 and on. Then the Lord said, "Get out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. The Lord will pass by." Now there was a strong wind and violent wind, rending the mountains and crushing rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire, a still, small voice. Elijah is waiting on God here. He's waiting on him to tell him his next steps. Elijah's a prophet. He's fleeing from some enemies. He ends up in this mountain. God's not in these loud natural disasters. God's not where Elijah expects him. God is in a still, small voice, in the silence and peace. I have faltered so much in my life in consuming too much information, in blocking out the peace, in taking away from my peace of mind, and just distracting myself with stuff I don't need that's not necessary. And I believe that in cultivating your relationship with God, growing your interior life, even just generally becoming more peaceful, less information, less content, less time online is better. Just like a brief backstory to fill in of where I have been in this. In the past, I remember I had a couple rules in my life of how I wanted to live my day. One such rule: if the car ride was over 15 minutes, I had to listen to a podcast or an educational YouTube video. If I was doing dishes, if I was mowing the lawn, brushing my teeth, going for a walk, stretching, even stretching like before lifting weights in the gym, on the cardio bike, something like that, I felt that I had to, for my productivity, for my learning, and for my development, to listen to a podcast or an educational YouTube video. It wasn't all educational. It could be, a Joe Rogan podcast, but oftentimes I felt the need to watch something where I could get something out of it, or I could learn from it. This was Andrew Huberman, Chris Williamson, Jordan Peterson, guys like that. Oh, I forgot to mention, it had to be at 1.5 times speed. It had to be, because if I watched at 1 time speed, I wouldn't consume as much, and I wouldn't learn as much if it was 1.5 times speed. And I low-key tortured myself with this. Like, looking back, it did kind of feel torturous. Like, I would want to listen to music. I didn't really want peace and quiet. Consciously, subconsciously, I was probably yearning for that, but I would instead force myself to listen to all this content and all this content. And before I get into, the meat and potatoes of this video, one interesting kind of side comment on this that I've learned is, if we kind of scale content, or we'll make our scale like this, from a really short, like short form YouTube shorts, to really long, a long book, or like a college course. So there's like YouTube shorts, YouTube videos, podcasts, longer podcasts, books, college courses. You may, in like 20 minutes of scrolling on YouTube, consume 20, if not like 50 different videos and different ideas. You could, in 20 minutes, watch 3 7-minute YouTube videos-ish. In 20 minutes, you could read a chapter of a book, yada, yada, yada. So you're actually consuming more ideas and more content in shorter time, but you end up not retaining it, and it doesn't, or for me at least, it feels less pure, and it doesn't really impact me as much as 20 minutes of reading a book compared to 20 minutes on YouTube. That's just one kind of preliminary point. But this idea of just like filling our minds with content, input. There's a quote I'll mention before I lay this out. It says, "What information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients. Hence, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention." It's from Herbert Simon, some old psychologist or something. So again, we have the verse here in Elijah, and I got this idea of like consuming all this information. I believe it was definitely from his principles, but there was a very specific video by the YouTuber Hamza, who I've listened to a lot in the past and who I've gained tremendous value from. I really liked him. And it's ironic that the video was talking about a monk mode protocol, which is an internet thing. You've probably heard of it if you're watching a video like this, like locking in, no distractions, focusing on your goals, cutting out distractions, noise, bad habits, yada, yada. And it's kind of funny that the video is titled Monk Mode, because real monks, I guess they're reading, but they're definitely not on YouTube. They're reading scripture commentaries, I would presume, spiritual books. They're not constantly flooding in secular information. But in this video, there was a principle from Hamza that always kind of stuck with me, where he advocated that your basic attack, which you do when you have nothing to do, instead of a bad habit like texting, social media, watching porn, whatever it may be, you want to move your basic attack from that to consuming helpful information, consuming books or long unedited podcasts like Andrew Huberman, Chris Williamson style stuff. That was his principle. And he was basically saying that, well, some people may say, if you're not going to use the information right away, if you don't really need it in the moment, you shouldn't watch that stuff. But his point was, oh, well, reading a book is better than watching porn. And his other thing was you kind of want to, in a sense, brainwash yourself with these beliefs and these ideas as your filler activity. And it's okay to not take action because later down the line, you may remember it or it'll put you in the right mindset. And I did this. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, I did that with YouTube, with podcasts, with content. And I do feel like I brainwashed myself, very much so. I feel like I have all these rules and status quos in my mind and in my life of, waiting 90 minutes to drink my coffee or going to bed at the same time every day, or even in terms of fitness, training within 3 reps to failure, but you don't need to go all the way to failure to achieve muscles, or 5 to 30 reps is fine. There's no difference in between them. These kind of rules and norms that I've consumed through all this content, which kind of dominate my mind and override my thinking. And for me, my conviction now is this was kind of an error to a point. I do agree with him that there needs to be some changing of your mind, of kind of molding your mind in a new way with new information. Again, I would obviously advocate for it being more spiritual stuff. But even, these habits like cold showers, optimal, Andrew Huberman-esque living, I think it is good. But for me, at least, consuming it and keep consuming it when I kind of have learned a lot of this stuff, still consuming it, still going back there, brainwashing me too much to where, it has brainwashed me too much to where I'm not testing the stuff out. I'm just listening to what is said on the internet and brainwashing myself. I feel hypnotized by Huberman to a negative degree. And Hamza was kind of pointing out that there is a point where even if you're reading something that's relevant to you, you're not going to take action on it, like a fitness thing, a spiritual book, I guess for this channel, like a faith thing, that there's a point where you read something and you don't take action on it. And that's okay, to still consume the information, to cultivate this proper improvement and righteous lifestyle, posture, whatever it may be. But after that point, once you start taking action on the information, there's no need to keep brainwashing yourself. I do definitely agree, though, with his first point here, that there's a period where you don't take action, but you should still learn and still consume all this information. To learn this stuff, that's good. But after you know it, and after even you begin to take action, cut it. You don't need to constantly be brainwashing yourself with information. And I realized that for so long I've done this in my life. And yeah, just overly brainwashing and not relying on myself and testing stuff out. So the opposite point of this, which Hamza was kind of disagreeing with, I've been reading the book recently, The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Highly, highly recommend it. Secular book, but very good principles of productivity, lifestyle, balance, habits, that kind of vibe, but very, very good. And in it, there's this chapter on the low information diet. And he has this idea of selective ignorance, of what we should cultivate in our lives, of focusing on what really matters. Again, for us, bringing it back, this is still a Christian channel, Christian video, but these secular things can even help our walk with God, or also more so helping us navigate the secular world. This idea of selective ignorance, of being okay with not knowing everything, of being okay with not staying up to date with the news, with sports, with celebrities, with TV shows, movies, internet, fitness, new trends, and whatnot, cultivating selective ignorance and consuming less. And he has these 2 principles which I really like, and I think I'll begin applying in my life, or have begun applying in my life, of only consuming information that is again, nonfiction information that is both relevant immediately and it is important. If it's not immediate, you're not going to use it, or you don't need it right now. You can wait to consume it later. And if it's not important, why are you watching it? Now, Tim Ferriss in this book, he's not like completely abolishing information, but he's saying when you're consuming something, especially a nonfiction, like self-help style book, this isn't like, he's not talking about fiction, or, I mean, I like to read a lot of spiritual books, biographies, stuff. He's not talking about stuff like that, but nonfiction, like Jordan Peterson and these self-help bro manosphere podcasts where you're trying to learn, only consuming it if it's important immediately. Now, thinking about this and reflecting on this in my life, I've grown some personal convictions where, and I've talked about this on this channel before, but I feel that YouTube for me, I think of it as too educational and not for entertainment. And this is me, this is my conviction. But I find that I've learned so much from YouTube, and I really have gotten a lot out of it. That's kind of why I'm doing these videos, like kind of modeling it after Hamza, that unfiltered style, but with the faith twist, Bro-Theology, but kind of from like, it is kind of like bro science in there. But I've learned so much from it, but it's kind of halted. My learning from it is halted. I feel like I can actually more engage with books. I wanted to read for the longest time, but I could really only get stuff from YouTube. I don't know if it was my attention span or whatnot, but now I feel like books are infinitely better, and I more so now enjoy reading them, especially if it's a good book. But I still have this urge to consume educational content on YouTube, and I feel almost like self-righteous with it. I remember talking with my brother. He watches fitness YouTube, but like Lex Little, Trend Twins, like those type of people, vlogs, like gym lifestyle content. And I'm like, Andrew, like, well, you gotta watch like Jeff Nippard or like Guys for Information. He's like, no, I just enjoy watching this stuff. And it's so funny that because I've watched this like fitness, informational, educational stuff so long, it feels like I don't really get much out of it. It's kind of like mental masturbation, like self-coping with all this educational content that I'm not really using or applying, and I don't need. It just kind of fills my mind with excess ideas. And I remember it's in Paul's letter to the Philippians. He uses Christ emptied himself for us. There was a very quick like clip from YouTuber priest Father Moses where he was talking about how we want to empty ourselves for God, to let God in, to let God's light shine through us. But we consume so much information online, ideas, yada, 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 especially stuff secularly, not spiritually, that it is hard, like, for God to speak to us, to enter our lives when we're constantly listening to music, drowning ourselves with thoughts and all this. And I feel like when I'm going on YouTube in like an educational way, I get kind of like skitsy with it. Like, I just want the principles. I just want to learn quick, but I don't really need the information. And after, I'm always upset with myself. I always feel, this part of the video, this is personal conviction, but I feel I wasted time. I feel it wasn't necessary. I feel I didn't need to do that. And it kind of puts my mind in like a skitsy, like schizophrenic, like quick learning, quick dopamine kind of manner, which I don't like how it makes me. And that's kind of been my personal conviction now of, immediate and important for educational content. I'll say one more thing on the educational stuff before I end, but just some like quick principles about consuming information, consuming media, like obvious ones. News, you don't need it. Like, I think that's very simple. I've been living this way for a while. People tell you when important stuff happens. The news is negative, it's fear-mongering, propaganda, it's scary. Trust me, your life will be better without the news. Porn, any stuff like that, social media, Instagram, short-form content, like this is obvious stuff we can cut out. Listening to music all of the time, probably bad too, especially if it's bad, like trashy rap music. It's probably not the best. And I think there was one other thing I was going to say. Those are kind of just obvious ones. I would also highly recommend not checking your texts or emails first thing in the day and waiting until you do some like thoughtful activities, some deep work, some reading, some learning, kind of having times of structuring your day like intermittent, whatever. times of silence, periods of silence in your day where you're not constantly just spoon-feeding yourself information and ideas. When you read the quote, I mentioned one more time, I think it's important. What information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients. Hence, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. Just to wrap it up real quick, the principles here. We want to pray. We're Christians. We want to, even from a secular view, we want focus. We want to be able to do our work well. We have to cut, Tim Ferriss in his book called it an umbilical cord of information that we feel connected to. For me, YouTube. Like if I don't watch these videos, like I need to learn this information. I really don't. Elijah found God not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the silence, in a small, still voice. And in my life for so long, I have just hammered down on educational content, which was definitely good for a period. It was definitely good starting out this self-improvement journey. But after a while, definitely negative, definitely too much, clouding my mind, making it hard to hear God, not creating room for God in my mind and my life with how I spend my time and the content that I consume. Again, this isn't a knock on the Bible. This isn't a knock on good spiritual books. This is a knock on trying to read 3 nonfiction books at once that aren't necessarily you're not going to apply in your life. After like maybe a year or a certain period of learning this kind of self-improvement stuff to start leveling up. But once you're able to take action, once you feel like you can apply these principles, like limit the input in your life. Yeah, limit the input. It's easier. It's just so much more peaceful. It's easier to pray, especially periods of silence too. I mean, obviously I'll talk to my parents in the morning when I wake up, or at school if I see a friend on the way to the dining hall. But having the morning prayer, morning kind of silent, not getting in immediate gossip or drama or deep conversations in the morning, for the most part, again, like on average, it makes, I don't know, it's just silence. Cultivating silence, cultivating selective ignorance of the world of content and input, because there's so much nagging at us. And especially like I've spent so much time on YouTube trying to learn stuff, thinking that if I'm watching something, it needs to be educational. But it's okay to watch some stuff just because it's entertaining and you're not trying to learn out of it. That's okay. We can only learn and retain so much. So don't brainwash yourself for no purpose with, just kind of limit the input. This will have massive benefits in your spiritual life. Monks don't have phones. Monks aren't on YouTube. Sure, they may read the Bible for like 5 hours a day. I don't know if it's actually 5 hours, or read and study, but it's something very specific and relevant and important to them. Spirituality, religious books are important to us as Christians. Nonfiction books, long Andrew Huberman podcasts, at a point we can cut them out. At a point we can, once we learn kind of these principles, basic strength training, fitness, diet, productivity principles, it's time to start living and to stop consuming so much, to limit the input, to limit the noise, to cultivate silence, so that we can grow our relationship, the one that matters most, with the Lord our God. Amen. And God bless.